Speaker today. No mic. Start over. Can you hear me now? Sounds like that ad. Okay. I'm very honored and excited to introduce our speaker today, Leah Pearlman. Leah grew up in Park Hill, just a few blocks away from here. She was an active member of our youth group. She also went to college on the East Coast and then entered the tech industry. And after that, she worked in the topic of happiness. She started some organizations that studied it and has brought those ideas with her today. She's the author of the Dharma comics, and she's also the author of Drawn Together, hand-drawn comics on life and love. She lives in Vermont now, and she's a writer, a teacher, a breathwork facilitator, and a personal coach. When our adult faith formation team was thinking about speakers for this topic, Leah came to mind immediately because I knew her story and her, and I wondered if it would be a good idea to have her come and talk because she came to it from a different angle. She didn't study happiness from the standpoint of a theologian who studied it and then kind of found their path to happiness. She was out of that society and that world and then decided she wanted to investigate it, so coming in from the outside and then learning all about happiness. So we're thrilled to have her here today. Please join me with a warm welcome for Leah Pearlman. There are seats down in the first row if there's anybody needing more seating.
Okay. Oh, you can hear me. Okay. First of all, I just want to say how happy and excited I am to be giving this talk to this group and this roof. I mean, this building is responsible for some of my very best childhood memories, some of the best friends a kid could ever ask for growing up, and some of whom are here today. So this is just such an honor and a privilege. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Vivian, for inviting me. I want to start by saying I have spent most of my adult life exploring happiness, but it's been a very personal journey. So before I begin, I want to acknowledge that what I offer here today has been born of my own experience, my own experimentation, the inspiration I've had from others, especially and including my husband, Vince, who has helped me embody so much of what I'm going to share today. So these ideas work for me, but I acknowledge that each of us is our own private infinity, trying to find our way. And so I'm offering this in the spirit of, as Ram Dass says, we are all just walking each other home. So, I was born to a goofy, hilarious, loving father. His name is Steve Pearlman. Some of you may have known him. As far as I know, he was one of the few, if only, Jewish members of the Montview Presbyterian Choir. And my dad is now listening to this talk from out back in the Montview Garden Columbarium. My dad was also highly competitive. So whether it was nurture or nature, I too am highly competitive. My family moved to Park Hill when I was 5, and by then I was already fixated on getting into an Ivy League school. Not kidding, I was 5. And I had already equated happiness with traditional success. My mom was always encouraging me to take more breaks, do things I love, dance, do art, but I had it in my head that I had to be successful in school and everything else came second. And so when it was time, we're one slide behind. Okay, when it was time, I applied to the Ivies. So I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit here. But in short, I ended up with a degree in computer science, and that led me to a job at Microsoft, which eventually led me to truly a little-known startup called Facebook in 2006. When I joined Facebook in Palo Alto, there were about 100 employees. We all worked in 2 rooms, one on top of the other, and yes, I knew Mark. I helped build many things while I was there, and the most famous of which is now the like button. I am not going to talk about that much today, but if a question comes up later, I'm happy to answer it. At the time, I was so proud. I was so proud to be working at one of the hottest companies truly in the world. I was solving brand new hard problems. I was surrounded by fun, brilliant people. My income was great, California was warm, and I wasn't happy. So 4 years later, I'd been working at the company for 4 years, and my life turned a corner the day my parents called to tell me that my dad's lung cancer had returned. It wasn't the cancer that scared me, though. It should have been, but it wasn't. It was the first thought I had after hearing the news, which was, I don't have time for this. We're talking about one of my very favorite humans on the planet, and I felt like I didn't have time. I went in that day, and I asked for a 6-month sabbatical, which ended up resulting in me leaving the company. I went back for a little while and then left for good. So maybe, for the first time in my life, I began asking myself, what actually makes me happy? And this turns out to be the wrong question, but I'll get to that later. So during my time off, and in the years that followed, I read a bunch of books about happiness. I went to a class at Stanford about happiness. I sat in many meditation retreats. I found a great therapist. I traveled to Nepal and India and Bhutan, a country that measures and prioritizes gross national happiness. I even opened a co-working space in San Francisco called the Happiness Institute, or HI for short. It's where people could come together and explore and experiment with what makes them happy. I was so interested in this question because I had done everything that I thought would make me happy, and I wasn't, so something was wrong with my math. Computer programmers are ultimately problem solvers, and I had stumbled on a very interesting problem. By asking new questions and experimenting to find my answers, my life began unfolding in ways that turn out to be more authentic to my nature. My life became a bit slower. I became more artistic. I started living in a more relationship-based way. And I started becoming way more honest. As I was exploring, I shared what I was learning through these drawings that I called Dharma comics. And Dharma is a Sanskrit word. In Buddhism, it refers to truth, or one's true nature. I began coming out, not with just my successes, as I had always done, but also with my fears. And my heartbreak. And when my dad passed away, I shared my grief. This journey has been windy, and it continues still. But today I want to offer 3 perspectives about happiness that have helped me greatly. And the first is that happiness comes from the inside. So what do I mean by that? Okay, well, what is happiness? So let me just hear from two people, a sentence, a definition, a description. What is happiness?
Love.
Love, great. One more. What is fulfillment? Freedom. Joy. What was that? Oh, I heard enchantment, but I like contentment too. Yeah, okay, this is great. So just notice happiness, love, contentment, joy, these are feelings. They come from the inside. And yet, we put things between us and our happiness. We place conditions on our happiness, and then we hold our happiness away until those conditions are met. So financial security, abundance, approval, validation, or having things our way are common things, common conditions we place on our happiness. So one more. What is something you think you need to be happy? Again? Family. Health. Belonging. Experiences, beauty. Okay, so just notice, if I have beauty, then I can be happy. If I have family, then I can be happy. If I have health, then I can be happy. And we wait for those things that we think we need to give ourselves permission to experience happiness. But we've all been in literally countless situations that aren't going our way. Illness, loss, conflict, dentist office. Failure, rejection, tech, politics, you name it. And do we really want to trade our happiness for a world that is rarely acting in accordance with our preferences? Life, for the most part, is doing its own thing. Even our own thoughts and our emotions and our behavior mostly seem to do what they want. Do we really want to base our happiness on what happens when so much is out of our control? For the first half of my life, I thought happiness was conditional on straight A's and college acceptance and jobs and boyfriends and accolades and salaries. But the proof of my flawed logic was that I wasn't happy. So what on earth was I doing wrong? And more importantly, what could I do differently? As I paid closer attention, I saw that no matter how hard I tried to control my experience, there were always changes, always ups and downs. So slowly, I began to hold what happens, both inside and out, more lightly, and choose happiness anyway. This kind of happiness I'm talking about now, it's a deeper kind of happiness. It's not an emotion or even a sense of fulfillment. This kind of happiness doesn't care if I'm also sad or angry or awkward or running late. It's actually possible to be deeply happy no matter what is happening. And this happiness I'm talking about is simply the pleasure and privilege of being. And if that is happiness, the pleasure and privilege of being, then what could we possibly need to do or not do, get or get rid of in order to be happy? When we look for happiness to come from the outside, when we need circumstances to be any particular way at all, we are always chasing. And we may feel a brief reprieve when we get what we want, but then there's always something else we need to be happy. And this leads to the second perspective about happiness. What looks like a pursuit of happiness is sometimes, often, not actually a running toward fulfillment, but a running away from a feeling of lack. Why is happiness even something we need to pursue? Why is it something we need to cultivate? Why isn't it just our natural state? When I got really close to my own experience, I noticed that hidden beneath my shoulds and have-tos and even my want-tos, there is often a feeling of lack. Sometimes that lack looks like loneliness. Sometimes it's a feeling of not being enough. Sometimes it's the rage and grief of living on a war-torn planet covered in cement and plastic. I don't have a comic for that one. Most of my ideas about what would make me happy have turned out to be sneaky ways to avoid my pain. And this is really why I wasn't happy by the time I left Facebook. I had never turned toward what hurts. Now, this is pretty much my full-time job, both personally and professionally. I help myself and I help others turn toward our biggest fears, our deepest hurts, our unprocessed rage. Why do we want to face what hurts? So we don't have to spend our whole lives running. So let's recap. The first idea. Happiness comes from the inside. It need not be conditional on circumstance. The second suggestion is more of a question. When I'm chasing happiness, what might I be avoiding? And now I'm going to add a third. When can I be happy? Well, what are our options? I am here now, and I am whole now. So if I'm not happy now, it's my job to find happiness now, not put it off for the future. Because in reality, now is all there is. When later arrives, it will be now. So if I can't practice happiness now, I can never be reliably happy. It's so tempting, especially when things aren't going well, to wait for happiness. It's tempting to hope and expect that it will come to us eventually. But this is procrastination. This is putting off our responsibility to love our lives now. From Thessalonians, rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you. Rejoice always, give thanks in all circumstances. In other words, be happy now. Okay, trust me, I know. This is way, way easier said than done. But it's impossible if we don't try. When I am down, when I am scared, when I am hurt, when I am angry, when I am uncomfortable in any way, I ask myself, where is happiness now? And if happiness is a stretch, which it often is, I ask myself, Where is okayness, or gratitude, or just the quietness of being? It's kind of like being deep underwater and then trying to swim towards the light. If none of that is available, though, I look for what hurts and I honor the pain. Honoring my pain brings a compassionate flavor of happiness. I might also ask for help from a friend. And if I still feel unhappy, then I let go, I surrender. Not in apathy, but in trust. If this moment is to be defined by suffering, then so be it. Not my will, but thine. In letting go, the fight ends, and when the fight ends, grace returns, and the condition for peace and happiness can come back. Happiness, the pleasure and privilege of being. What if it requires no conditions, no avoidance, and no time? How might our lives be different? How might our world be different if we take responsibility for our happiness now, no matter what, including what hurts? From Philippians. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. So look up, look in, be happiness now. And this is not a switch we flip. It's an intention and it's a devotion. It's a proficiency that we cultivate with practice. And the more we do, the more available it becomes. So thank you so much for your kind attention. We're about to move into a Q&A, but before we do, I have an epilogue. Okay, as a kid, I was a lot like my dad. But now I'm way more like my mom. My dad used to say, "Your mom is the only person whose glass is half full, even when it's upside down." So the reason I'm in town today is because 6 days from now, my beautiful mother and her loving fiancé are tying the knot in this very room. Since my dad died 13 years ago, even while honoring her grief, I have watched this woman choose happiness every single day, regardless of circumstances. And so, Mom, you are my living proof that choosing happiness attracts a happy life. Thank you all for listening. My pleasure.
We can enter into doing the question and answer time. It's really hard not to add some stuff here because I've known Leah since she was a little girl. And I'm so proud and happy for her path in life, and I'm grateful to know her. Thank you so much for being here. Questions?
Oh, sorry. Hi, thank you. That was wonderful.
We need you to have a mic.
I do have a mic.
Okay.
Hi. Just wondering, do you equate like happiness with joy, or find like a difference with that?
For this talk, I chose a definition of happiness. And joy could be a feeling, and happiness could be a feeling. And so I might use them differently. Joy might be the experience in a moment that ends of having an upswell of energy and a smile on my face. And this kind of happiness, one way I think of it, is it's kind of like the background on the screen. Like it's just there, even when the content is swirling, even when a dear friend dies, there's kind of still this, maybe, I was just gonna say the word joy. So a joy to be alive and witnessing and loving deeply even when my heart breaks. So I separate it from emotions that come and go and think of it more like a background state. Yeah, thanks.
Hi. Because of your background at Facebook, I just sense I'm so grateful I grew up when I did, and that I raised my children when I did, so we didn't have the challenges of social media out there. I think the whole comparative thing, looking at what other people are doing and why maybe, I think that's a factor. How can parents and grandparents help their children and grandchildren overcome that or get beyond that? I mean, it's not a fact. I'm not on Facebook. I've never been on Facebook. The people I care about, I email or I call or I text, and share pictures with. So anyhow, you don't care about me. What can you suggest for us? Thank you.
I am not a parent, and I do not underestimate the challenges of raising kids in this current climate. The way I've held it since I had to sort of detox my own self from being deep in the tech world and social media was not putting my attention on the tech, but putting my attention on something else. So emotions, or my physical body, or what's happening, or presence. And so one way when I talk to young people, we just have conversations about what does it feel like when you get a lot of likes on your post, or what does it feel like when you don't? And starting to really bring awareness to the actual experience of being on tech with conversations that are actually curious as opposed to, social media is bad. Genuinely, what is that like for you? How does that feel? And I have talked to a lot of young people, and a surprising number that when they put attention inward, they self-select out often of those apps. So it doesn't take much to notice, it hurts. And if somebody's listening and paying attention and we're listening to ourselves, we don't touch hot stoves once we know they're hot. So honest conversations, curiosity, and inviting self-reflection. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your question. Vivian, I don't have to know what time it is, right?
I'll tell you, it's 10 after.
Okay, great.
Hi. I'm wondering what you, in hindsight, wish that young, high-achieving little girl knew. And I guess maybe it's following up from what you just spoke about, but for people who might be raising similarly competitive, driven young girls now, what advice you might have for us?
Good question. One thing I'm pretty sure about myself is I could not have been talked out of it. And given the way I experience my life today, there was a lot of pain and struggle and recovery from that kind of ambition addiction. But I'm so happy now. So I wouldn't necessarily change it, and it was hard. But I think I honestly would just say maybe the very same question. how does this feel? And what are you afraid of? That's one thing I never actually understood or asked. Like, if I didn't get a straight A, if I didn't win everything, what was I afraid of? I never asked myself that question. I never realized I was motivated by fear. And for me, you know, I started when I was 5, but one thing that happened was like when I got to middle school and I didn't turn out to I didn't feel like the beautiful princess I thought I was gonna be. And middle school was challenging. I got even more doubled down on school because I'm like, well, I'm good at that. Boys are hard. School I can do. And that made me actually get even more, like I had to be good at school because it was the only thing I felt really proud of. And I wasn't very open, and we just didn't have certain kinds of conversations, I think, that let any of us, including my parents, know this was happening for me. So if I could go interview my own inner 13-year-old, I might have her tell me what was hurting, what she was avoiding that was directing all that energy into schoolwork. Yeah.
Hi, Leah. It's Marilyn Ackerman over here. Rachel's mom.
Oh, yeah.
You know Rachel?
Hi.
Hi. I have a question about generational definitions of happiness. Like, I think you experienced more what I was raised with my father, that there's a certain order to things, that you do well in school, you pick a good school, you get a job, you get married, you have children, there's a path, and you're happy if you made the path. And my father lived to be 107, and when he was 105, and my son was 4 or 5 years into a relationship but not married, my dad asked me, is it okay for you that Eric's not married? And I said, yeah, why? He goes, well, he should be married. They've been together a while. And I said, all I care about is he's happy. And my dad said, I have never thought about your happiness or anyone else's. It's just doing the right thing. And I was just dumbfounded by that because I rebelled against that. I mean, I did do the path that I was supposed to do because I'm still married 44 years later. But I never thought about that, and I thought it might be generational. And I've had that conversation with some other, like my massage therapists or things like that, and they're like, my parents don't understand happiness. And we've had those conversations, so I just wondered if that's your experience.
Well, what it reminds me of, it's kind of adjacent, is I heard a talk given a while back, and this woman was talking about definitions of safety. And she said, in my parents' generation, safety was more equated with financial stability. And if I have financial stability, then I can be safe. And in the next generation, it was relationships. If I have good friends, then I feel safe, less about financial stability. And I have one of my best friends, a coach that works with a lot of young people, early 20-somethings, and the main theme she's hearing now is, as long as I'm doing what I love, then I'll be happy. And there's a lot of emphasis on what do I actually want to be doing, as opposed to following some right path. So I hear what you're saying also, that there's an evolution, and maybe we get the hang of one thing, and then we're like, okay, job and success, what else might that lead to? And it's exciting to know, too, that whatever ideas we got, our brains were so impressionable when we were young, so we inherit a bunch of stuff, and that we, as adults, have to start working to reopen those neural pathways, listen really hard to the younger people in order to keep those definitions evolving and expanding. Yeah, thanks.
I think of the saying, no pain, no gain. We all work, whether it's building a log cabin in the mountains or there's pain along the way. Can you talk about happiness while we're in pain?
one thing I'm thinking about is a metaphor that I hear sometimes of if happiness is the sun, then sometimes we can't see it. The clouds are covered. So it's not something we necessarily always have access to, or when things are really hard, that it can feel like emotionally cloudy and happiness doesn't seem available. So that's why I really loved some of these quotes, especially the Bible quotes that I pulled here today, because they talk about even when I'm in pain, no matter the circumstances, even when I'm struggling, can I remember what's above the clouds? And can I remember a kind of happiness that transcends circumstance? I do think, apparently, at least in my life so far, it seems to include pain. I don't personally see a way around that. I haven't experienced that. So I think of it less as, in order to have gain, I must have pain, and more like, there's pain. Now what can I do with that? Or how can I maybe find benefit in that, or growth, or healing from it, instead of requiring pain in order to feel okay? Yeah. Did that answer the question? Thank you. Okay.
So you teased the topic a little bit earlier about your travels around the world, and I was just curious if you could talk a little bit more about just experiences, the experience of happiness in some of those other cultures, maybe compared to what you witnessed in the US, and I don't know, like if there's some observation around different experiences based on material wealth and or lack thereof, and just what differences you saw and experienced.
The first image I had when you asked the question was when I had an image of two little boys in Nepal, clearly friends, holding hands so affectionately. And I didn't remember ever seeing two young American boys holding hands and touching each other and hugging each other, and seeing that all over the Far East especially. So that was one difference, and actually it was years I was drawing Dharma comics before someone pointed out, and then I went back and looked and noticed almost none of my comics were touching each other. The stick figures were always alone or apart. There was only a few where there was any contact. So that was a big realization for me, that in our culture I see a lot of, this is my dance space and that is yours, to quote Dirty Dancing. And even, it can be kind of stressful, but if you're waiting for a line in India, your front is pressed up against the back of the next person and behind you, otherwise someone else will just get right in. There's so much contact. And that's something I've been actually very recently learning to start to lean into. And the other thought that comes to mind is in the US, and this kind of gets to the other question about generational happiness, recently, for the last, well, I don't know how many years, but several decades, there's been kind of a focus on personal happiness. The American dream is, I will get ahead, or what makes me happy, or let me go into my therapy and heal my wounds. And some of my current mentors and teachers right now are starting to wonder, is that even really possible to be happy alone? Maybe it's a co-arising. Maybe it's something we do together, and we're in a field of togetherness. So maybe we stop trying to solve our own problems and just hang out more and touch each other more with consent. And yeah. Mm-hmm.
Leah, I just wanted to first thank you for the courage that you've shown, the vulnerability today to stand up here, and I think you're just such a great witness for so many people who have had that similar experience of earning their love in this lifetime. Two words that you brought up, presence and surrender. A lot of the Christian mystics focus on that. And I just think it's so cool, whether you know it or not, you are keeping alive a tradition that goes back long before the popularity of influencers and personal happiness gurus. And I imagine you see that connection, but I think it's just really powerful, and please keep doing the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say one thing about that, which is growing up half Jewish, half Christian, I never really got into the religion thing. I loved the youth group. I loved my friends, but I was never really into the church thing. And it was really Buddhism that first introduced me to spirituality. By accident, I knew it was a silent retreat. I did not know it was Buddhist. I might not have gone. But that was the entry point. But it has been so healing for me in the last 5 or so years to start to learn about Christianity and then understand the relationships between these faiths and hear that truth is the same in any language. And and that it makes giving this talk here today feel even more like a homecoming for me.
We don't have to leave Christianity to find spirituality.
Can you
keeps preaching that, but
Yeah,
Leah,
Mom.
You've talked recently to me about the importance of learning how to receive rather than to give, and that we don't receive enough. We don't honor receiving the gifts that we're given by people. So can you talk about that?
Yes, actually that popped up when when you asked the difference in different cultures. I first heard this from a modern philosopher, Charles Eisenstein, who was trying to understand why we have a breakdown of community in the US. And he thought it was air conditioning. Everyone's inside instead of outside. And he was finding all these things, and then his conclusion was the more we've learned to automate our rides to the airport and our Uber Eats, and we don't ask for sugar from a neighbor anymore, we don't ask for help, and we stop receiving. And partly it's if we receive, we suddenly think, now I owe, and I don't want to keep track of all the owing, so let me just not receive. So we've just blocked receiving. So ever since I heard that, it is a practice of mine, and it's still a practice, that anytime there's an offer, to say yes and thank you and receive it without keeping track in some tally sheet, for the sake of building community. So often we think to have community, to have love, I should give more. And Charles turned that on its head for me. To have community, to have love, I need to open myself up to receive more, let others give. Yeah.
I see happiness as a byproduct, a compound word not to be found in any thesaurus.
Thank you.
Hi, first of all, thank you for coming. If a person, and I may not be alone in this, but after a lifetime of struggle and searching, finds himself like in the fourth quarter, maybe approaching this 2-minute warning.
I missed the last sentence.
If a person, after a lifetime of struggling and searching for happiness, finds him or herself in the fourth quarter, approaching the 2-minute warning, does that person have time to find happiness? And what would be your suggestions on doing so? Thank you.
I have not been in that exact situation, so I can't know for myself. I recently spent 5 days alone in a dark room. It's called a darkness retreat. Part of the practice of this is to kind of face death. What is it when I have no one's here, nothing's left? And in that, what felt like a bit of an infinity, 5 days alone in the dark, started to notice how often my mind wanted to get ahead in time. When I leave this room, What will I tell people about it? Just so much wanting to get ahead, whether it's, a few days, a few weeks, a few years. And the only way to tolerate, for me, being in the dark room, nothing to do, nothing to write, nothing to see, was to just wonder about right now, just right now. What's good about right now? Even if it's terror, even if it's regret. And that's one thing that started happening for me in the dark. I started seeing regrets and remorse. And that could have been a painful situation, but in fact, it started being like I got to live my life over again away in this moment by revisiting some things I had skipped over. And so I can't say for sure that it's possible to find happiness, or I don't know, and each of us is different. But part of what I wanted to emphasize here today is just what you're asking about. Like, if not now, when? And who cares how much time is left? Whether it's 10 years, 100 years, let's just work on right now and look for it now and see what happens. And that, I think, is where the surrender and the grace comes in. Because I've been up to this for a very long time, and sometimes I'll be in months of I can't find it. But I keep looking, and that's the thing that I feel so grateful for, is just the reminder to keep looking.
I just have a comment based on your response basically about lack of community and how we've grown apart over the years, since air conditioning, for example. And my brother-in-law, I'm retired, I'm a grandma and all that. And my brother-in-law has, over the last year, he's retired as well, dropping by periodically, just ringing the doorbell, you guys around, and sit and talk for a few minutes. That used to happen a lot when I was a young mom, newly married and stuff, working part-time. But it never happens anymore. And it's been such fun to have Tommy stop by, and then I started stopping by their house periodically too. And it's hard to do that, especially young adults like you, when both couples are working and all that. But it means so much.
That makes me want to say, someone asked about raising kids, and I have to just say a plug. A dear friend of mine just wrote a book called Zed Moonstein Makes a Friend, and it's for 9 to 13-year-olds. And it's a journey of a kid sort of wrestling with friendship, AI, real people, AI, and he ends up having to find a pen to write a letter, and that is like the arc of the whole book. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there because it's a way to have conversations about tech and friendship and connection. And it just reminded me what you said, because ever since I read that book, I've been doing, anyway, I love writing letters. So that's my version of stopping by, is just to write letters instead of send texts. Yeah.
Thank you. I am so sorry to say we have to stop right now. I wanted to let you know that on the back table there are a few of Leah's books that she's in the midst of a new printing and wanted to bring them with her, but she couldn't. And she's kind enough to give them out. So whatever's left, you're welcome to, and there's a place to sign if you are interested in possibly getting the new edition. And Leah, thank you again so very much for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you all. Thank you.